back here on the Cover 3 podcast, continuing our dark horse conversation, taking a look at the Big 12. But I'll let you get first pick here. Who's got your attention right now in the Big 12?
All right, so who did we say was not allowed to be picked on this?
I will. So if you're drawing, where does Kansas fit? That to me is like, Kansas is in a Georgia Tech type spot where if you want
to talk Kansas and Iowa State are the last two that should not be picked. I think you should have to pick
okay,
like Colorado, Cincy, Houston, UCF, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, Arizona.
That's fair. So who you got?
I mean, if I have to pick a team out of that list, it feels bleak, but also Arizona State felt pretty bleak last year.
This is the league. I mean, an 8-win turnaround for the Arizona State Sun Devils, projected to finish 16th in the conference, and then they go on to win the daggum thing and make the CFP. So,
okay, I think of this group, there are only 3 that should be picked, and we have 3 guys on this show. So we will see if we sweep that. What I feel like is obvious in my head. I'm going to go Cincinnati.
All right.
I think that Cincinnati has not a super easy schedule, but a manageable schedule. Cincinnati offensively did show a pulse throughout a lot of last year. They did beat Arizona State, by the way. Now, that was the game in which Sam Levitt did not play. That was a Jeff Sims special. But I think Cincinnati defensively, like they made some smart hires last year that maybe didn't fully show in last year because their defensive line was just so banged up. And I know that they lost some guys on defense, but I do think that like Sorsby, a competent run game, and maybe just a defense that doesn't have everybody hurt all the time. Can we get some positive regression on the injury front on defense? I'm serious about this. Like, take a look at their schedule here. It's really like not that bad, right? I had it pulled up earlier. I just wanted to make sure that was the list we got to pick from. So if you look at Cincy's schedule here, like this is, could they beat Nebraska week 1?
Yes.
I think so too. Like Nebraska lost a ton on the D line. You don't think that they can go score like 30 on Nebraska or 28? What if Raiola throws a couple picks up?
Oh my gosh, that's going to be a 1-score game.
Now that's not a home game, by the way. That's an Arrowhead.
I know, but I'm just saying.
But that's like a sneaky week 1 kind of banger game. That's not going to get any attention or hype beforehand. Who could turn out to be one of the better games of the day.
It's Thursday. That's Thursday night. That is the Thursday. That will be one of the best games of Thursday night, as long as we don't have a crazy weather delay that pushes the ending until 1 in the morning, like we did with North Carolina, Minnesota. I think that's what's sort of occupying that Thursday night spot.
They have some interesting things on their side here. Now, like at Kansas is not easy, but that's an easier road trip than some of the places in this league. At Oklahoma State is certainly not easy, but again, there's a real scenario in which Oklahoma State is bad again. I don't really know that Gundy fixed everything. At Utah, man, that's for me that's a loss, unless just something really weird happens. But I do believe that Cincinnati went to BYU 2 years ago and stunned BYU with a pretty nice effort. So like they have traveled to Utah before, which is not an easy trip, and playing the elevation there, and won. So do I think you're going to beat Utah? I do not. BYU, like, is Retzlaff going to play? Because if he doesn't, that could be a really deflated team, a team that enters this summer with really high expectations, and that stuff comes out, and obviously, I think due process and facts and all that stuff matter quite a bit, but we don't know if he's going to play, right? I think we can safely say right now that they have not made a statement as to whether he's going to play or not. If he doesn't, that could be a very deflated team by November 22nd. Mm-hmm. At TCU, have we ever seen a Sonny Dykes team start hot and finish?
No, never.
They're going out of the balloon. UCF, I think, sucks. Iowa State, without those receivers they lost, we're going to find out just how good Becht is. And I think he's pretty solid, but I don't think he's quite as good without those dudes. Baylor at home is not easy. Arizona, again, I think it was ill-advised, but some people tell you they almost made a coaching change last year. There are some scenarios in which Sorsby stays healthy. The run game is nice for Cincy. Receiver scares me a lot. The defense is healthier than it was last year and plays some complementary football. And some of the teams on this schedule fall apart just a little bit. And Cincinnati is your Big 12 champion.
Man,
I love Brendan Sorsby, so I'm certainly not going to rule it out.
Yeah, I saw the comment in the tailgate where it was like, I don't know why, but I love Brendan Sorsby. It's because he's a good quarterback.
He's not bad for this
Yeah.
level.
No.
You watch him and you're like, that's a good college quarterback. So, let's see. We'll see. Tom, what you got?
I am going to go with West Virginia. I am buying into the Rich Rod hype. And I think more important than anything is that this is the Big 12. And like we looked at that schedule just now, Cincinnati, and it's like you're saying they're definitely going to lose on the road to Utah. And they will. And that's not that big of a deal because in the Big 12 last year, the top 4 teams in the conference all finished 7-2. You're allowed to make mistakes in this league and stay in the hunt. And I look at this West Virginia team. Obviously, there is the juice and the excitement from Rich Rod coming back. But kind of like with my Virginia pick, like schedule-wise, it's not, it's a Big 12 schedule. It's got some of the better teams or some of the expected better teams on there. Arizona State, Utah, Kansas, BYU, we just discussed. We really don't know how that's going to look. TCU, Texas Tech. But the one thing I'm looking at here is that of the giant recruiting class, tell me if this sounds familiar. A new coach comes in, brings in a ton of recruits, a lot of them from his former G5 school, which was a competitive program within its conference. That program's named Indiana, and it was Kurt Signetti, and we saw what the Hoosiers did. Rich Rod's coming to West Virginia, and he's bringing a whole lot of Jacksonville State boys with him. So there's already familiarity with the coaching staff, with the players, with the playbook, and all that kind of stuff. And I think that when you look at the Big 12, there's so much opportunity to just win at the margins. And I think that is one of those margins, that kind of familiarity in this era where there's so much, you look at Texas Tech, who's bringing in a ton of transfers. Not all of them have any real familiarity with their new coaching staff or any of their new teammates. West Virginia has that familiarity. There's not going to be as much of a transition, which could give them a little bit of a head start. So I look at all that stuff and I just like Rich Rod as a coach. I don't think it's a coincidence that he's won everywhere he's gone. Now I know he didn't win enough at Michigan, but he's never had bad teams. So I think in this conference with this coach at this time, there is an opportunity for the Mountaineers to just kind of sneak up into the top, just like Arizona State did, and then at the end of the year find themselves going to the Big 12 championship. So my dark horse is the West Virginia Mountaineers.
Got to go to Tempe. Got to go to Provo.
And I'm not trying to – this is not disrespectful to Arizona State, but is going to Tempe that big of a deal?
I think from West Virginia to Arizona is a travel. If we're going to, and they get a bye on the other side of that, but they are going to be home against Colorado 1 week, and then they are flying all the way out to Tempe. And I mean, that they're probably going to stick that game at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time, 7:30 local.
True. So they get an extra couple hours to catch up on some sleep.
I mean, couple extra hours to float down the lazy river, check out what the ASU undergrads are doing. Head on over to the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and fire some tweets off. Yeah, I would love it. I mean, because what they ran at Jacksonville State was very Rich Roddy offensively. Mm-hmm. So if all of a sudden we're looking at blue and gold, dual threat, good, fun offenses, that'd be awesome. I'm not buying it, but I would not push back on it. Of course, all the Big 12, Big 12 type stereotypes applying, of course, that you cannot rule anything out.
And just like for college football fans of our age, the idea of West Virginia being good again under Rich Rod is just a fun idea because it was very fun the last time he was there. We enjoyed it very much.
Rich Rod, I forgot about Rich Rod banning TikTok, but that's just to make sure there's no distractions when they go to Tempe.
Right.
Can I interest you? We spent some time at the beginning of this show talking about this program and sort of the building for the future. Can I interest you in the present for the Houston Cougars? Houston went 5-7 last year and kind of was a chaos team. As I mentioned, they had 0 offensive touchdowns in 3 different conference games, but they also beat Kansas State and they also beat Utah. What? Now, they had an absolute negative offensively. Their offense took a snap and hurt the team. Every single time they snapped the ball offensively last year, Houston was lowering its ability to win. But defensively, they were pretty stout. And I think that they still are going to be able to be pretty stout defensively. I think that Connor Wegman, regardless of whether he did or did not meet expectations, and probably did not at Texas A&M, I still think the best of Connor Wegman is capable of getting into the Big 12, going up against Big 12 defenses and being successful. And then when I look at the Houston conference schedule, there is no Utah, no Kansas State, no Iowa State, no BYU, no Kansas. I mean, Iowa State, BYU, like these are not just the teams that I mentioned that they don't play are not just, teams that we normally expect to be among the tougher outs in the league. They also are some of the toughest road trips to Provo, to Salt Lake City, to Manhattan, to Ames. And so you don't have any of that. Now, got to go to Corvallis out of conference play. Got to go to Tempe, as I just mentioned. But I do think that in terms of where Houston can stack some wins, where Houston can see a big improvement in the win total, 5-7 a year ago, I think we see a 3-win improvement this year. I think this can be an 8-4 team with steps forward offensively and trusting Willie Fritz.
My concerns here, and because you just made all the arguments for it's like there's a huge recruiting class or transfer class, which we've talked about with our other options, is like, volatility could really hit lottery ticket style. It's just of their offensive line, like 4 of their starters, the projected starters, are going to be transfers. It might even be 5 by the time the season starts. That's always kind of weird to me too. And it's when you have that many new guys on your offensive line, and also when you look at where a lot of the transfers have come from, like they got a couple offensive linemen from fellow Big 12 schools, but on the defensive side, on the lines of scrimmage, they're coming from G5 schools. And I'm always a little concerned about linemen coming from smaller leagues heading to a bigger league. Because even if the Big 12 is not the Big 10 and the SEC, it's still a little bit different. You know what I mean? So I think the offense should improve because it'd be really, really hard not to. But I worry about the defense being good enough to kind of keep them in a lot of games.
I don't know that they're better than last year. Ooh. I kind of wonder if they're punting this year and going all in on the Keyshawn Henderson thing. Nobody's told me that. I'm just reading the tea leaves here. Like, here's why I kind of think this. So I'm not a big Connor Wegman guy. We'll see how well that works. And Willie Fritz and his son, like, they're a lot smarter than I am on this. So I'm probably wrong here, but if I have to argue against it, they lost their entire secondary in the portal to legitimate teams.
Mm-hmm.
I think
good players.
Yeah. Like, okay, so Keontae Scott goes to Miami, right? And then Louisville takes one of their guards. And then Arizona State takes Maurice Williams, one of their safeties. AJ Halsey, their other safety, went to LSU. Jeremiah Wilson is a pretty nice corner. He's going to be FSU's best corner. I'm missing some other guy. Hershey McLaurin, who I don't think is great, went to Purdue. So I'm not really going to count that one. Then Texas Tech took Anthony Holmes on the defensive line. Jonah Wilson went to A&M, and then TCU took Joseph Manjack. Those are 2 receivers. Now, granted, you might say receivers from last year's team doesn't really make a big deal. The secondary, to me, is a pretty big deal. And if you pull up the schedule again, they do play some legitimate quarterbacks. Like, they have to go play Sam Leavitt. I think they played both Baylor and TCU.
Yeah, at the end of the season.
Right. So I'm very worried about that secondary this year. I think that's if you look across the country, that is one of the units that got most decimated by the portal. So I'm interested to see how that works. But there are some teams that don't pass the ball well at all on this schedule. And so if you're better than I think, then I think Chip's pick is definitely live.
I also
say too, well, like, they're all coin flips.
You mentioned like Wegman, and I know he struggled there last year, particularly throwing the ball. But I would not be shocked if Zion Chris is starting games for the Cougs by the time the season ends, and not because of injury.
Just because of performance?
Just because of performance.
I agree.
Wow. All right. Anybody else in the Big 12 we want to make sure that we highlight here?
From that list?
I mean, from the list of the conference. I mean, we've given you a Cincinnati, a West Virginia, and a Houston. I had Kansas on my list, but like I mentioned, Kansas is probably in the Georgia Tech, not really a dark horse type situation.
Yeah, if you get 12 games of Jalen Daniels, they're 100% not a dark horse.
No.
Right.
I would say of the teams at the bottom of the board, the only one I'm really going to give any kind of chance to, and I don't really feel very good about it because as I've well documented on here, Oklahoma State, just because history suggests that maybe they could bounce back to win 10 games again, even though I really don't think that's going to happen. So I would say that's the only team that's realistic to me.
Do we think Iowa State's a dark horse?
No.
No, I think Iowa State's going to be 7-5, 8-4ish.
Okay. Like none of us mentioned Colorado, probably for a reason, but I mean, I guess like the case for Colorado is probably the quarterback, the transfer. Why am I blanking on his name? Salter.
Salter.
I think the case for Colorado is that Salter returns to the 2023 version of Salter. I don't think he was happy last year because he tried to transfer and then couldn't transfer out. I think there was attitude stuff there, kind of understandably. And although he's really should be mad at himself, but if he's happy and in a good headspace, or maybe if Julian Lewis really hits and plays super well for them, I could potentially see Colorado out of this group. Like, don't clip this and be like Bud Colorado for the Big 12, but out of this group we had to pick from, The other thing on Tom's that I wanted to bring up and didn't, what if Texas Tech stumbles? That's a team that is going to have like no team chemistry if that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they could easily just be like, I got mine type thing and not care about each other. Like that could be a much easier game for West Virginia because of where it falls in the schedule. Like they could absolutely quit and have a new head coach next year if things start slowly. I'm in
the midst of a Texas Tech autopsy. In their 8-5 season, in their 8 wins,
Did
I think
they die?
Is it not autopsy? I don't know. I guess they were outgained in like 5 or 6 of their wins.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I know that's just some raw, some raw numbers there, but it's at least had me wanting to go back and look at exactly what was there. I know Bud's favorite term, luck box. I don't know if they luck box their way, whether that was a 6-6 team that might have finished, 8-5.
Yeah. If it happens once, it just happens. But when it happens 5 times, it kind of starts to become a little fluky.
Yeah. So I'm sort of, so to answer your question, Bud, what if Texas Tech, doesn't meet these sky high, we're going to win the Big 12 with $1 billion expectations? Yeah, I could see that for sure.